What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim, back with another quick video. If you guys have noticed, a lot of times on my channel, I really don't talk a lot about downloadable content. Occasionally it pops up from here to there. Say if I got a collector edition of some kind and they threw in some additional map packs or weapon skins, but typically once the core game is done, I am also done with it. Very rarely do I go back and dabble with the DLC much at all. Probably the most I've come to date would probably be the Capcom Heroes mode and Dead Rising 4 Frank's Big Package, but I didn't even beat it. And after a couple days of replaying it, I kind of got bored with it. So that's why this is such a surprise to do a video on this. But I just finished and played Assassin's Creed 4. Not Unity, not Syndicate, not Origins. 4 back when in the day. They had DLC, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and it was called Freedom Cry. Now, this was part of PlayStation Plus, and it wasn't even a recent PlayStation Plus thing. I think this came out a couple months ago, but I went ahead. It was a quiet day waiting for the Super Bowl to start. I wanted to take a break from Monster Hunter and for Prey and for PUBG to do something entirely different, and that's exactly what I did. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it because it really took me back from a storytelling perspective. And if you haven't played Black Flag, you're crazy. It was my game of the year when it came out years ago. It's what propelled me really to get into writing for video games. Somebody actually stumbled across my blog, what I was writing about that game, bought the blog from me, and then proceeded to pay me pretty well for the next few years as I slowly started to build up a gaming website. So that game, Black Flag, has a lot of sentimental value to me just as a player, but I really did enjoy the game. And I argue it's still the best Assassin's Creed game, even though it has nothing to do with an assassin. And in similar light, the first mate through most of the game was a guy named Adewale, and this DLC is his story, which takes place years after his adventures when he leaves and he goes off on his own after Black Flag. This picks up years later. He's been trained and sworn in now as an assassin. He wears the garb. His weapon of choice is a machete, which goes along with his very brutal nature, and I liked it. It was very different. So Black Flag, it's the Assassin's Creed Black Flag DLC, Freedom Cry, reutilizes a lot of assets from Black Flag. So you're going to be flying. You're going to be sailing around on your ship. You're going to have pirate adventures. You're going to have to upgrade your ship. You're going to attack other ships. There's going to be hunters. You're going to have all the islands you can explore to go find treasures. You can hunt whales with the spear. You could dive underwater. Pretty much everything that you did in Black Flag, you're going to be doing again with Adewale in a totally different place. This takes place near Haiti. The main island of this is Port-au-Prince, and that's where most of the missions take place. But there's a lot of ancillary islands you can go and explore, and similar, go find upgrades for your ship, upgrades for your weapons. With one big caveat. Obviously, it's a lot smaller. The whole game took me about 5.5 hours to beat. I didn't do everything, but it was a pretty good chunk of time. The big thing here is that Adewale gets thrust into this slave movement, and it's really, really cool because Adewale was a slave at some point, kind of earned his freedom on the open seas, has that spirit of being a pirate and a free spirit, and he stumbles across slave trade going on around Haiti, and he kind of decides he's going to intervene. And how he kind of stumbles into it, it's kind of goofy. He's out on another mission, and he just happens to kind of like eavesdrop on this, and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And then he puts his really important mission on hold, which you never really find out what it is because it's not really important. But this is a really good character arc for Adewale, and it's really cool as a player to play this because you're getting to see things from the oppressed side. So a lot of the slaves, like when you're walking around the town, all the guards are like beating up slaves and torturing slaves, and you can intervene and kill the guards and release the slaves. If there's like a runaway slave, the guard will quickly come running after him. You could either do nothing or you could intercept and kill the guard, let the slave get away. You could free them from auction blocks. There's a lot of different ways you can interact with the slaves. to free them or do nothing. As you do this, you start to build up a resistance. And I was really hoping this was going to kind of take a Assassin's Creed approach back like with the Brotherhood, when you remember Ezio started to build up the order again and started recruiting assassins and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, maybe we're going to get some aspect of that. Unfortunately, the only thing that unlocking or freeing assassins does is it raises a counter on your screen, which unlocks additional gear, costumes, and that sort of thing. So kind of a letdown. You're freeing all these slaves. I thought there would be some cool reward to it because it is a different mechanic than something I'm used to playing. But unfortunately, all it does is gives you different skins and costumes and that kind of stuff. And for that, I think it was kind of a letdown. But, you know, it was DLC. But I could totally have seen this to be a standalone game, and I could have totally seen this be the real Assassin's Creed. No offense to Edward Kenway, but his story and his time as an assassin was pretty boring. This was much more interesting. I would have much rather loved to see this be the main story arc of a guy like working his way through and the slave ring trying to stop it. And this ancillary story that goes on top of it is, as he begins to build up this movement and he begins to break down the slave ring, the horrors around him escalate even higher because the slave owners begin retaliating on the slaves. And there's this really cool level where you're sailing around and you're trying to rescue a slave ship. So to rescue the slave ship, you have to blow up all the other ships around it and then swing on, fight the guards, and then rescue the slaves. This one, the slave ships just start firing, or the guardian ships just start firing on the slave ships just to kill them all. Just to kind of prove a point that, like, hey, this is just property. We don't care. We're making a statement here. And you have to sail up on your ship and destroy the enemy ships and then try to rescue as many slaves as you can from this sinking slave ship. And it was really an intense scene. You know, the water's like rushing in and you're trying to break all their chains off and you just can't save everybody. And then the ship starts to crash and like fall in the water, and then you have to do this climbing puzzle to get out. Very, very emotional scene, and it was really impactful. It sets up for the last mission or two of the game, but the point being that every time you do something as Adewale, you're actually almost in a sense making it worse, because for every slave you don't save, they get tortured even more to prove a point. And I wish the game had explored more of that concept, but unfortunately it doesn't. Again, it's only DLC, it's only a couple hours long, but really cool concepts that are being kind of like, you know, discussed here and seen here that you don't normally see in a game. I mean, typically you're a guy, your character, female, male, female, it doesn't matter. Typically is like there's a universal good that they're doing. In Assassin's Creed games, it's like, hey, you have to kill this villain because we said so. And the repercussion is that, yay, the town is a little safer. But rarely do you see that backlash from the powers that be. In this case, the Templars are the slave masters. It's interesting to see, like, for as much as you help, you also hurt. And there's some conflicting stuff in there. And again, nothing groundbreaking. This game was largely received like mediocre, like in the 6 to 8 out of 10 range. But I think it was a lot better than that. And I think if you have, whether you've played a lot of the Assassin's Creed games or not, for me, I stopped at Black Flag. I did not play Unity. I did not play Syndicate. I do own Origins. I haven't yet dived into it. It was cool to go back and play that world because it's a very pretty world. Black Flag, I think, holds up very well technically. It's a beautiful looking game. A lot of really cool like one-liners and a lot of little story like lore elements kind of peppered in there as the characters talk, because like if you remember on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, when you were sailing around with Kenway, you would listen to the pirate shanties. Well, they don't have pirate shanties in this one because I don't know why, actually. I think they should. But instead of when you're sailing around listening to pirate shanties, you'll have the slaves that have now become your crew talking to Adewale about how he became an assassin and why is he doing what he's doing, and what does this mean for the greater good. And there's some really good discussion in there, and it's little snippets here and there. It's nothing that's gonna like win an Emmy or anything like that, but It was actually really well received. So, anyways, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. Put a video together saying that, a lot of times I feel the DLC in these games isn't that great, but Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry absolutely proved me wrong. Here we are years after the game has come out. I'm playing it, I'm enjoying it, and it inspired me enough to do a video. So that was the other reason I wanted to do it, was just kind of add it to my collection of things that I could put my stamp on and say, hey, I recommend this, because if you haven't had a chance to do so, check it out. It's a standalone game, by the way, so if you do not have Black Flag, it doesn't matter. You could just play this on its own. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you see, and if you do end up checking it out, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if I steered you right or wrong. It's a short enough experience that I don't think you're going to be horribly boring and frustrated with it. I think you're probably going to be in the same camp as me, where you're going to wish there was more. And it would be nice to maybe see in the future Ubisoft either re-examine Adewale's story or go back to this period of time, because it's very fascinating to see the resistance that went into some of these slave movements to try to stop slavery. And I think that would be a great timepiece to continue, especially with a character who was a former slave. You just really have a good recipe for a very engrossing story. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there and play some of those old games, because you know what? They're still pretty darn good. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.